I appreciate all the exciting news. What a wonderful way for our clients to be heading into the last couple of weeks of the year. Great job, everyone. When I think about delegating fundraising tasks, I'll be really honest, my brain sort of initially shatters. Not because I have control issues, I promise, but because of the wildly different structured and sized organizations that I've personally worked for and the vastly different organizations that make up our sector. So, it's one thing to talk about delegating or specializing in your area of development when you have a team. Right? When you've got specialists and you can segment those portfolios and you can talk about different geographic or giving levels, when you can ask for a report from your development services team, right? When you don't have to worry about scrubbing your database because you've got folks for that. Um, when we are in a smaller shop, right? When we are in one of I believe the National Council of Nonprofits reports that the vast majority, 88% of nonprofits have budgets of 500,000 or less. So when we talk about our average team size, we are really looking at development shops that are founder, executive director, chief fundraisers, really wearing all the hats, right? That is, go ahead to the next slide, Trish. We'll look at that fun little pie chart. You can compare your budget size to the rest of the organizations in our country. When we think about dividing work, when we think about ROI, we know that regardless of your budget or your staff size, the Pride model really believes strongly in the power of volunteer fundraisers. Now, delegating to a fundraiser who is a volunteer versus a member of your staff is certainly different. Go on to that next slide, Trish. Fundraising is not a solo sport. We say this often. It is definitely a team activity. So we know that we need connectors, we need cultivators, and we need closers to be part of our team. We've got to build a strategy around all of our major gift prospects and think about the power of receiving a personal invitation from a colleague or a peer, a connection of yours who happens to be serving on a local nonprofit fundraising committee. Hey, my family's going to this event, or we're going to tour the clinic. I'd like for you to join us and come learn more about the work that I'm doing with this great organization. It starts with that peer to peer connection and a deep personal invitation into the organization. If you can strategize and layer that with a special introduction, maybe from your guest speaker or your presenter, if your leadership team or a board member is teed up to introduce themselves to this prospect at this initial event, those are the things that layer together and help us really elevate a prospect's engagement with our organization. It helps us fast track our way to building a meaningful relationship and eventually a funding partnership. Let's go ahead and kick it to Jake so he can talk a little bit more about our successful clients that have used this model.
Thanks so much. So the one thing that Jenna said that I really want to highlight and make everyone noticed and heard is the difference between a charity that outreaches to you directly versus one that goes through a peer. So to illustrate the psychology of this, you can actually think through a scenario in kind of if you were approached to donate to a charity. So imagine you get two identical pieces of mail, both from two different charities that you have never heard of. New charities in town, of course, that at the end of the year, we're getting a lot of mail. At least I am. I'm sure some of y'all are getting kind of the end of the year mail appeals of like, please remember us and you're giving these holiday season, etc. One of them is directly from the charity. It's addressed to you. It's personalized, but it's from the charity that you've never heard. This is the first time you're hearing of it. The second one is from a very close friend that says, hey, I'm involved over at the so-and-so charity, and I'm giving of my time, or we're donating. I'd love to have you join me in giving. Which one of those is the obvious one that you're way more likely to support? They have the same mission. you have any brand equity with either of them, this is the first time hearing of either of them. The one where you know somebody and have some trust is going to be the obvious one where like, okay, well, I don't know either of these, but I know Jenna, and if Jenna's involved, I'll give something. I'll give $50 or $100 or something. I'll at least respond to the mail because I don't want to see Jenna the next time and haven't ignored it. Or like, you know what, we do need to give a little bit more money this year. I'm picking my top two or three charities. This is a good way to select it. This is someone I trust has already vetted. So this volunteer model and how much more successful it is to have that first introduction is way, way more powerful than the 7 or the 10 or there's different studies that say different things. How many different interactions a new brand has to be in front of you before you buy or before you donate. So for volunteer fundraisers, for many of our most successful programs, the programs that we've run multiple campaigns with, we're in the tens of millions with in terms of total volume. The volunteers is the backbone. Maybe they're not doing the actual asking in all cases. They're not like, oh, we're relying on just this volunteer group to be our fundraising department. Not necessarily. It's the outreach. It's the connection to community leadership and prospective donors and new money that we don't have access to normally. We don't have to have this perfect brand that has the endorsement of our community. Because if we can get a couple of key movers and shakers to serve on our behalf and be volunteers, their brand and their trust goes with them and can be extended as ambassadors on our behalf. So we have this cross section of people that hopefully have unique skill sets and unique knowledge and run in unique circles where people you would never have access to otherwise, and have their personal contributions sort of set up the giving of others, if nothing else. So if we have the chance of like the easiest fundraising ask is, hey, Jenna, my family and I have decided to do $1,000 towards the Humane Society this year. We'd love for you to match it. And like, that's the easiest fundraising ask you'll make of all time, as opposed to like, I'm a paid development staff, or I'm the CEO or the executive director of a nonprofit, and I say, we'd love to have you contribute. It's like, of course you do. That your job is to ask me for money, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's what our entire industry is based off of. We're not upset about that. It's just, it's so much better coming from a peer who's chosen it and is not being paid to be there. Where people mess this up is they don't give guidance or accountability. They say, okay, we have fundraising volunteers, we have our board, we have this list of people who can help us. We're just going to assign them to go get money, and then we're going to report back in a month, and hopefully it happens. The guidance being the training piece, we'll talk about that in a minute, and the accountability of like, what actions do I actually need from you? Not go get money, but we'd like you to make 2 introductions this month. And this is something you can task a fundraising committee with. This is something you can task your board with if you've not tried, and saying, we don't need you to be fundraisers, but I'd like you to open a couple doors. Or let's start with one. Like this December, we just need everyone to refer one person and get on Melissa's calendar. And if all of y'all do that, that's 12 asks that are now pretty high likelihood of converting to something that's a very, very high dollar per hour activity that we're doing, but not skipping the, here's what I would like you to do, and here's what we're going to do at the next board meeting or the next volunteer meeting to check in to make sure that you have done it. Small lift. We're not going to ask a lot of you, but we are going to ask something of you, and we're going to check to see who did it at the end of next month. Trish, could you go to the next slide, please? All right. So in order to get someone to do something, you have to understand their motivations. Now, the best and easiest way, we don't want to overcomplicate this, is just to ask them what we call their why. They could have picked any number of charities to serve on a board for, or to give to, or to spend their time with, or to volunteer. Everybody has a limited amount of time. And even if they're philanthropic and they want to get involved in the community and they're community minded, being able to select a specific charity is obviously their agency, and they picked yours for some reason. So all you have to do is to say, hey, what is your connection? Like, why this charity? Why now? Why is this important to you? And that usually is enough to motivate them to do the thing that we need them to do. Saying, great, I know that you want to support animals, kids, women's health, whatever the category of thing that your mission is that you do. And say, okay, so what we want to do this December, what we want to do before the end of the year is raise X, Y, and Z so that we can fund the blank, or we can build a blank, or we can purchase a blank, which allows us to do this. What we need from everybody is to go out and get an additional 20 gifts of some kind. Now, instead of just sending out a mailer, we're going to do that anyways. We would love to have sit-down conversations. So if everybody could get 1 or 2 people, this is how we're going to structure it. Here's what you say when you outreach to them. But you tie it back to the thing that they're motivated about. Like, I just really am passionate about kids. I want to help kids. Great. Here's how specifically you can help these kids. It's like, yes, your serving and your guidance is great, and it's our job to be fundraisers. We just need you to help make those connections. Or, as Jenna mentioned, there's other parts of the fundraising. Say they don't want to make connections. They're not very social people. They don't feel like their network is the right network to be givers. Just to go on a call, and when we say a call, like a fundraising ask, as a cultivator. And all they have to do is tell their why. This is not like they have to memorize a fundraising script. It could be you, the staff person, and them, the board member or the volunteer, and say, yeah, I brought Jenna with us today. She's our board treasurer. I just wanted her to share a little bit about why she got involved because I think it might resonate with you. And even if she does or doesn't know the person you're asking, Jenna can tell a story about how she got involved and fell in love with the organization and move to that emotional side of the brain where we're not just trying to facts and figures. You're not going to talk anyone into giving away money. No one makes money by giving money away, even from a tax perspective. So we have to get kind of out of that right brain, figuratively, into the left brain kind of emotional decision making, and talking about why, talking about human stories, and talking about a singular person, always more powerful. There also might be more of a closer where they're like, actually, I was in sales, or I actually like asking my friends, or it's energizing for me to be on that part of it, and they can just come along and again say the thing that I said earlier, which is, hey, I've decided to give this much to the charity this year. Would love for you to match that, or would love you to join me at a level that's comfortable for you. And you don't have to do that much more than that. So you don't have to ask them to do every part of the fundraising process. Just getting them involved in one piece of it is extremely powerful and gives you a ton of leverage. It's a huge multiplier in terms of your time, your resources, your outreach, all of that. To ask them again why they're serving this capacity, and also, just to mention, gaining insights into their motivations will help you better align, again, their tasks and skill sets with the things that you're actually asking them to do. Where the biggest mistake people make is they just ask everyone to do everything. And of course, everyone is not good at everything. So they fall short in one of the pieces and they go, oh, I can't be a fundraiser. It's like, there's so much to the fundraising process. And I promise you, one of those pieces you're going to have a lot of fun doing if you would just but try. So we can give people different categories of things that they can find and experiment with and match people's natural skill sets with what we're asking them to do specifically. And that really helps with their own motivation. Okay, next slide. And finally, here, we always say people who have some level of training or instruction are always going to be more successful. So sometimes organizations do a great job with everything up to crossing the finish line. They recruit people, they assign them to specific roles, they give them specific accountability metrics of like, we'd like this group to make one new connection, we'd like this group to go on a call with us or make an ask or whatever you're assigning everybody. And then they don't tell them how to do it. So if volunteers don't understand their role in fundraising in the campaign itself, or they don't see how what they're doing fits into the bigger picture, they will probably procrastinate on it and not do it at all. This is probably the case with many of your boards. You say, well, we're going to fire up our board. We're going to get them to do some sort of a fundraising something. And then they don't do it. And you're like, God, they just don't care. They're just not motivated. They probably care. They don't have to serve on a nonprofit board. No one's forcing them to show up to those meetings. But if they're uncomfortable with any part of the process or what you're asking them to do, the tendency is not to say, hey, I'm uncomfortable with this. I need training. I say no one. Most people are not going to ask for that. So them just kind of sneaking into the background and not doing anything is their way of like, well, I don't want to mess this up and I don't know what to say, so I'm just gonna punt and say that I was busy. If you can give them training and in terms of like, here is how this process fits into our overall fundraising program. Here is how you set up a call. If you're going to outreach to someone that you know to potentially sit down with us, here's some of the things that you can say and don't say. If you're going to be a cultivator, here's how to frame your why and what you can say in the meeting. If you're going to be a closer, these are the words that you say when you ask for money, and here's what you don't say, and always be specific in the amount. And there's like these little tiny things. It's not overly complicated, what we're doing here, but there are some specific do's and don'ts, and just letting them know what those are. This is not a one-time process where we say, well, we did the training a couple of years ago and it didn't help. It's like, well, you're going to have turnover. You're going to need repeatability. Sometimes people don't understand things on the first rep. That's a very human thing, obviously. So we want to have some sort of continuing fundraising education, even if it's 5, 10, 15 minutes at these volunteer meetings, at your board trainings, or at your board meetings, just so that people have, hey, as you're doing these things for us, here is what we'd prefer that you say, and here's what we prefer that you don't say. As you're wanting to spend a couple hours a month helping us in the campaign, these are the specific tasks that we need you to do, and here's how to do them. And to reinforce those as if it's the first time you're saying it at every single meeting, especially if it's something that gets quarterly and you're not meeting as often. Pretend like it's the first time every time. Some people will hear it and be like, I know this. Most people will be glad for the refresher. And some people are like, well, I didn't go to the last board meeting, so this is actually new to me. This is great. But having that continuous education. And the final thing that we say is practice, like actually practice saying the words on each other, which I know can be a scary and challenging thing. So you don't have to do it in front of the group, but have it doing one-on-one. Best case scenario, if they're asking for money or setting up a fundraising call or talking about their why, the first time they do that is not in a higher stakes situation with an actual prospect. It would be better to do it where they can make a mistake and try it again. So it's their fifth or sixth rep. And those of us who are in the fundraising industry and have done hundreds of fundraising asks maybe forgot how scary it was the first 5 times. We were like, this is new and this is uncomfortable. And all new things feel uncomfortable until they don't. So giving them some low stakes reps in the beginning makes a huge difference. So if you're getting stuck, providing just a little bit of information and training continually and doing some live practice and role play makes a significant difference. We just had a client who went through this process and their fundraising volunteers, their board is rocking and rolling with new prospects. They have all these new asks that they're making end of year that they never would have. And they'd been asking their board to do this for a while, but they just hadn't provided training. We did a very specific hour-long training with their board, offered a couple different sessions, and that was all that they needed to get excited and get started because it was just a comfort thing for them. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Michaela.
Thank you, Jake. Well, this next section is about how to retain and keep your volunteers engaged, right? You've done an assessment of what they're excited about, why they're participating, and your duty as the facilitator for them is to really make sure that you're staying true to exactly what they raised their hand for and offering training to help them grow. Never bait and switch. Be clear about what you need and why you've recruited them onto your team, why you've asked them to participate. They should have a special, unique role that they're excited about contributing to. Always throughout your meetings, whatever the cadence may be monthly, clearly outline your fundraising goals, where you are to date, and specifically how each volunteer can contribute. Give them a specific timeline and goal figure that they're aiming for. By giving them bite-sized pieces and specific goals with clarity on how you're going to help support them in achieving this, that's going to increase your volunteer engagement. Sometimes we don't want to push too much, and it can actually decrease engagement because your volunteers, they want to help, but they don't always know exactly how to plug in or don't feel like you're holding their hand along the way. You want to make sure that they're supported in helping you all reach your cumulative fundraising goals. Giving specific assignments and timelines is critical to keeping things moving forward and helping your volunteers feel and be successful. One of the things that I personally will see in volunteer management is the volunteers excited. They have this huge network they want to introduce to your campaign or your volunteer coordinator or your development director, whatever it might be. And they've got a list of 12 names. And then they leave the meeting and don't actually get any action items accomplished. If you can narrow it down to 2 people to introduce, like Jake was just saying, your one goal this month is to make a couple of introductions. You can narrow it down with 2 specific names and exact actions. And then you, as the fundraiser, are supporting them in that follow-up after a couple of weeks. How did it go? What other information do you need? Do we need to adjust the strategy? You're going to help them feel successful, engaged, and ultimately get to your goals as the fundraiser yourself. So next slide, please. Let's talk about another critical component to retaining your volunteers. Think about yourself. Why do you stay a part of a community? Or why do you stay a part of an initiative? It's usually because of a sense of belonging or a sense of accomplishment. Creating a sense of community among your volunteers is not only fun, It's a great tool to keep them engaged and feeling like they're contributing to your end goals. What does this look like? Celebrate their success, highlight individuals that have done an incredible job, talk about the impacts of connections that have been made. Be sure to celebrate your donors in volunteers in multiple spaces, just like you would with a donor. Encourage collaboration and communication across the whole team. So not only are you giving each volunteer a specific assignment and duty or role within your fundraising initiatives, you're also making sure that they understand how their peers in that volunteer group are operating. Say one individual is responsible for engaging your business donors, and another is responsible for your annual gifts. That annual gifts individual might meet a great business owner that they think would be interested. And if they know who the volunteer is that's responsible for making these connections and supporting with cultivation, you've created a match that can help grow your network and help your volunteers really feel a team. You're the coach of the team, you're the instructor of the team, but your team members can certainly collaborate. Involve your volunteers in every milestone and celebration through special communications, through highlights in your newsletter. If you're doing a public event and they're there, thank them not only as a donor, but as a volunteer. Celebrate what keeps them feeling like they're contributing even more than their financial support. Providing personalized thank you notes is also a great way to do this, and this is the perfect time of year to integrate that into your practices. So now that we've talked a little bit about how to keep your volunteers engaged and how to build that community, let's turn it to some questions of the group. What questions might you have? Or if you have a scenario with a volunteer that you'd like to talk to, this is a great time to bring it up. All right. Well, it's all right to not have questions at this point in time. Maybe we'll go to the next slide. If you are considering this and a question does arise and you want to talk to a Pride team member, you can use this QR code or give us an email. If you're already working with a Pride team member, you can bring it to your weekly. But if you're not, we would be happy to talk with you or each one of you about how to optimize your fundraising at your organization specifically. And if you're looking for more educational opportunities, this next slide will highlight a few of them.